Hello, and welcome to a very special edition of The Piano Men. Pleased to welcome keyboardist, singer-songwriter, and musician Eric Barfield to the show. He has performed with numerous artists such as Tracy Lawrence, Matthew West, Rachel Lampa, Chris Allen, and so many others. He's also played with 17 Dove/K-Love Award nominees and winners, performed at many iconic venues, including the Ryman and the Grand Ole Opry, as well as 11 Grammy-nominated winning artists. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, how's it going? I sound kind of impressive when you put it that way, but I don't really feel that impressive.
Well, getting to know you, I'm sure we'll know so much more about your musical journey and talking to us about, where your career in the direction you feel it's going to go and your aspirations. And we'll just start off by talking about your childhood and upbringing. Tell me about where you're from.
Man, I'm a St. Louis boy and transplanted to Nashville. But man, I love Nashville. I've been here 10 years. Moved here in 2015 with my wife. And yeah, we moved down and bought a little shack in the north side of town. And just felt instantly at home in the music community here. It's just an incredible group of people.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that Nashville has a very tight-knit, close musical community, family. You also have LA and New York. Those are also pretty popular as well, but Nashville just has this different vibe to it, right?
Man, yeah, you're so right, because the minute I got here, I felt like I was with people who were just like world-class musicians, but they weren't shutting me out. They were like welcoming me and the people who were just like me into hanging out. And that was just kind of crazy for somebody who, basically just showed up to town with no reputation, with nothing. And just felt very grateful very early on that people would actually hang out.
Yeah, so it's just so cool hearing about your story, how you got to Nashville. Well, let's rewind a little bit. So, Missouri, Midwest, was music something early on you just loved growing up?
I did, yeah. So my mom was a piano player, teacher for most of my life. And my dad was a singer-songwriter, and the first time we ever came to Nashville was 2001. We recorded at Dark Horse Studios. Well, I didn't record. I just sat. I was 14 years old. I sat and watched these guys take my dad's songs and build them out, and I'm just like, this is heaven. I want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't care about anything else from now on out. And it was just a magical experience. And it took me almost 10 more years past then to realize, like, you know what, maybe I should move down.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you coming from a musical family to have those memories, those crystallized memories of you watching your father or your mother playing piano or setting up something in a studio, and you're just mesmerized by it, right? So growing up, who were like some of your favorite artists to listen to?
Well, man, it depended on the era. I started out loving this group called Jars of Clay. Do you remember them?
Yeah, 90s.
Yeah, 90s. And then I loved Bruce Cockburn. I loved Joni Mitchell. I loved Paul Simon. My dad was big fans of those people. And then discovered DC Talk, which is another like Christian artist from late 90s, and specifically the album Jesus Freak, which just happened to be made in Nashville by a bunch of Nashville incredible session players, some of which I've actually gotten to meet now and like say, how did you do this or how did you do that? And like, I don't know, it was a long time ago. But those were the people I idolized growing up. And I didn't even, I loved the songs. The songs were the first most important thing, but I found myself coming back to music over and over again because of the production, the things that like were added around the songs.
Was there like a particular album that you just loved listening to, or had even a few albums that you enjoyed listening to?
Man, I feel like and we probably are all this way. We've had different albums touch you at different points in your life where like this is an album you listen to for a couple of years and because it reaches into some part of who you are. And the first one for me was Blue by Joni Mitchell. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that. It's way before my time. But it just, the songwriting was so catching. It was just so provocative in that album. And then, man, it's gone. I feel like every 2 or 3 years I find a new artist where I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just so good. But yeah, it kind of started with that. Then it moved into the Beatles, and then it moved into Motown, then it moved into, and it just keeps going. And
exactly.
Like hip hop and rap and, Kanye West and all of these great, all of these great artists that have something really special to say in each phase.
It's good when you're well versed in so many different genres, because I feel like there's something for everyone to enjoy, and finding different influences I feel like is very important, especially as you get older. Your tastes may change, but you may find something that you thought you'd never like before. Like for me, I started really actually seriously getting into country music recently, like within the last few years. I never thought I'd ever say that before, but
and man, I hear you, because I didn't grow up listening to country, and I moved to this town full of country music, and I was like, was a little bit of a snob. I was like, oh, it's country music, it's not that big a deal, and then got to play with some really great country artists and realized that this music not only was like very complex when you really started digging into it, like in order to do it really well, it was complex. And also you could just talk about things in country that you just can't talk about, like divorce and, love and broken relationships and healed relationships and drinking with your buddies. Like there's certain things you can't talk about in other genres.
Exactly.
That's home in country.
Yeah, so it's definitely that good old vibe, fun vibe.
And there's such a communal aspect here. Like the first time I got to play the Grand Ole Opry, I was kind of like, oh great, it's another gig. And I showed up and fell in love with the culture backstage of like all these artists hanging together, watching each other play, watching each other sing. It was just really special. Yeah.
Do you remember like getting to meet some of those artists?
Well, the night I was there, Jack White had played a couple of nights before and had apparently trashed the green room. That's what I'd heard. Like he tagged it. He didn't trash it. He just tagged it with his sign, and they'd find him and cut it out, and apparently it's hanging somewhere in the Grand Ole Opry. So that was the highlight of the first time. But I also got to meet Randy Travis, and he was side stage while I was playing. And I don't normally get starstruck, but just seeing him over there at the time, it was so sad. He was in the wheelchair, but he was having a great time. And seeing him just sit there and realize like, oh wow, that is the Randy Travis, the person who has written all of these songs, and realizing like he's just enjoying this just like everybody else is, and I'm supposed to enjoy it too. That's what I'm here for.
It always seems like whenever you're playing or opening for someone and you see someone like really big like that, it feels normal to feel starstruck, because these are like these larger than life personalities just coming across, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I got to meet Randy Travis.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because when I first moved to town, I used to get really starstruck all the time. And realizing that there's just kind of a culture here of like, yes, we work in music. We eat at the same restaurants. We eat at Loveless Cafe, and we eat at, like we were talking about earlier. And it's great because it sort of normalizes it, while at the same time encouraging you to realize like this is possible for you as a person to have a long-term career doing something you really love.
Yeah. Well, going back, talk to me about your first piano lesson, or when did you feel like, you said earlier when you were at your dad's studio in Nashville, or at Dark Horse, I should say, watching your dad work in the studio, this is when you wanted to be in music. Can you tell me about your first experiences taking lessons and playing piano.
Well, if there's any struggling piano player listening right now, I want to encourage you because I hated it right off the bat. I fought my mom like crazy for the first 2 years. Just did not want to do it because piano's a hard instrument. It's hard to get good at it. It's hard to get the first steps down. But once you get the first couple of years down, then it becomes fun. And all of a sudden you're able to play songs you like and play chords and do all these fun things.
It's crazy because I've heard the opposite.
Really?
I've heard about guitar being a little more, the harder one, piano being a little more easier.
You know, maybe it's probably just me because it could be that I'm just not very good at piano, but I just love it so much I keep going at it.
Well, I mean, as long as you've been working at it for so long and perfecting it, I mean, those lessons, surely they paid off.
Yeah, my mom always likes to bring that up. She's like, "Yeah, I'm glad that I made you stick with it." I'm like, "Yeah."
Well, you'd mentioned, you were struggling first starting to learn. Talk to me, elaborate a little bit more about those first few lessons, because I'm sure, like you were describing, it was tough.
Man, so I grew up homeschooled, and my mom was also my piano teacher. And I remember her sitting in the kitchen working on stuff, me in the living room, and imagine having your piano teacher, 5 feet away from you while you're practicing piano.
That can be very anxiety producing.
It was kind of like, she'd be like, you're blending those scales. You don't hold down the pedal. Oh, Mom. Okay. All right. Here we go. So, but I think the advantage was that I didn't think about at the time was that by her being there, she was making these little tiny corrections over and over again while I'm practicing. And that helped me to get much faster than I would have otherwise.
You could say your mother was your motivator, your biggest motivator.
Yes. And Mom, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. I put you through all of that whining and complaining.
Do you remember the first few songs you remember learning?
Man, it was all classical. I grew up playing lots and lots of classical. I remember the first song that I was like, ooh, this is really good. It's called Ballade by Bert Mueller.
Okay.
And it's one of those that if you play piano, and you learn traditional piano, you're going to play Ballade at some point. But I remember just sitting there and playing it and being like, wow, this actually sounds like a song that I would listen to maybe halfway,
Yeah, it's kind of like an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, and classical is great because it gives you all the foundations. But yeah, I think the first time I ever played a song, though, where I was like, I really enjoy this, was 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton.
Yeah. Yes. And great piano solo.
Yeah, it's so fun. And that was the first one that I remember my friends being like, oh, wow, you play piano. That's cool, Whereas you played Ballade, like a classical thing, I was like, oh, that's...
And it's very recognizable. Like, if you hear those...
Yes, yeah, and I mean, it's iconic now and, made fun of, but it's a brilliant part.
And it's beautiful. Like, you just walk into some random place and that song's playing, and it's just like, I know exactly what that song is, and boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to transition to our first selection of the evening. This one's called I'll Be Me. Talk to me about how this one was recorded.
Well, this was recorded at my buddy Andy Freeman's Studio Punch Up. It's in Brentwood. I actually just came from that studio right now.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so he was having a listening party tonight.
Nice.
But PJ is a transplant as well, and I just cut keys on his album, and we were like trying to give it a real analog vibe to it, so you'll kind of hear the hook of the song is the synthesizer work.
All right. Well, we're going to play it right now. This is I'll Be Me on the Piano Men. All right, we're back here on the Piano Men. You're talking to keyboardist, singer, songwriter, musician Eric Barfield on the show tonight about his illustrious career in the music business. Can you tell me about some of the first few gigs you played?
Man, I'm trying to think. So Smyrna had a festival and I remember we played in a back room to about 6 people, and that was my first gig in town.
Wow.
And I was very, very, very excited and so nervous. And shout out to Jill Grossman for hiring me, taking a chance. And yeah, it was really fun. But honestly, when I first moved to town, I sat on my hands for almost a year. Like I didn't,
Really?
yeah, I didn't play. I was trying to play. I would go to like Commodore Grill and a bunch of other like writers rounds, and I would just come up to people, just cold turkey, and be like, "Hey, I play keyboard. Could I play for you? I'll play for free. I'll play for whatever." And people would be like, "You're insane. I'm not going to hire you to do this." And so, yeah, so there was a lot of me just at my place, just kind of woodshedding. And then I did the thing with Jill. And then I got the opportunity to play with a artist named Meredith Andrews. And she's, and it was just a one-off. And I showed up and I did a really bad job.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened?
So I showed up and they had the wrong keyboard and it threw me. And I just kind of the rest of the night didn't play my best. And so, yeah, so that was kind of one of those first ones where I was like, man, my career is over. Like, I can't believe that I've already torpedoed my own career.
The wrong keyboard. How did that happen?
So a lot of times backline companies just won't get the right keyboard. And I had all my sounds all set for my keyboard, and I showed up, and the keyboard that was supposed to be there wasn't there. And so it's just one of those things, unhappy accidents.
Rookie mistake.
Yes. Yep. I learned a lot.
Okay.
But yeah, after that, there were a couple other people that took chances on me, and then it went from being like 1 or 2 gigs, a month to 6 or 7 gigs to I played an average of about 200, 150, like 250 gigs a year for about 8 years.
8 years, a long stretch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just came off the road last summer to pursue session work full time here in producing.
Session work. I mean, tell me what goes into that. I mean, because it seems like it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of fun. Probably my favorite. I mean, basically, it's you sitting in a studio, depending on the producer. Like in this case, with PJ, we'd sit in the studio, we'd listen to the song, we'd write out a chart using Nashville numbers charting, which is this like, yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar. It's basically like a jazz numbering thing. We break down like, okay, what sounds do we want where? We hit record, and next thing you know, you got an album.
It's something you kind of have to learn like really quickly, I feel like, because you're just used to like playing the notes, right? The chords and learning the chords. With Nashville numbers, for those that may not be familiar with it, it's like 1, 3, 5. And it's like you have to like really know what those chords are, right? And depending on the scale too, or the scale and
yeah. So the thing I love about Nashville numbers is it's really easy. Like it's 1 through 7, and each chord has a number, and as long as you and then each one also has a defined either 4 beats or 2 beats or 1 beat, depending how you notate it. And so it's very laid out in a very strict way. I was never a good sight reader of traditional sheet music, so Nashville numbers was like, this is great.
What was the hardest part about sight reading?
Man, it's because when you're sight reading on piano, you're having to do 2 simultaneous, sometimes 3 or 4 simultaneous notes at the same time.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get all those things, and you're trying to read them in real time. Like, I also played drums in high school, and I remember sight reading my snare chart and getting a really high mark on it, because everything's hard for piano for sight reading, but it's easy once you move to other instruments that are monophonic, where you're only having to read 1 note at a time.
Okay. Now, did you go to music school or college, study music?
Didn't.
Okay.
And I was really self-conscious about that for a long time. Because there's some great people in town, like Belmont, and then of course a lot of Berkeley people here. And I went to a really awesome like fine arts program in high school, and then my mom, of course, was a music teacher, and my dad was a singer-songwriter, so I kind of got it that way. But no, I didn't go to college for it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like once you get into a certain routine, and coming from a musical family, you find those people that'll be willing to work with you, help you out.
Mm-hmm.
You just go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about careers is that you just never know.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I love the people that I've worked with who have gone to Berkeley, who have gone to Belmont, who have gone to Vanderbilt. They're incredible players, almost universally. And on there's many days I would love to go back and just actually have that experience and get to go and all that. But that said, I've never had somebody come up to me on a country gig or a CCM gig and say, "Hey, do you have a degree?" So it's just not something that really comes up unless I wanted to teach, which of course I would need qualifications for that.
Now you have worked with a lot of people, worked with so many people in the industry. Have there any been pieces of advice that you take away from your time with them or from certain gigs, like you had mentioned that one with the piano?
Man, there's some truly deeply wise people in this town that I have really benefited from. One of those people early on was Steve Brewster. He's a drummer here in town. He's drummed on probably a lot of your favorite 90s countries albums, like really, really great drummer. And he told me one time, if you show up to a session, it's because they want you. And that's one of the hardest things when you're first starting, because you're just like, what am I doing in the room with all these talented, smart people? Like, I'm nobody. I don't have anything. And to have that confidence of like, somebody called you because they want you, not the thousands of people around you who can do what you do. That really settled me down, especially at first.
Yeah, because I think that when you are just so good at your craft, you become in demand, essentially, because a lot of people, they know your work, they've listened to you. Word travels faster through the mouth, and you there you go.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is it's just like any other job. Like, if you hire a plumber and he shows up and he does a good job and he does it on time and for a price you can afford, you're probably hiring him again. And that's the advantage of this town. It's very blue collar when it comes to its music, which I think is wonderful because it makes me approach it the same way. Like, show up, do the job, have a good time, and maybe you'll get called next time if you're lucky.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about gigs that you've played on, what have been some of your favorites?
That Ryman gig was really special. That was a really, really cool one. Man, there's been so many that I've playing the K-Love Awards was really a wonderful experience. Getting to do that at the Grand Ole Opry house. Man, there's been so many shows in like small towns or even big towns where nobody's really there, but the band we were playing together and having just the best time ever. And those are some of the ones that stuck out the most. Like I remember when I first got to town, I was playing with a band. We played a hole in the wall place in like northern Kentucky, and right on the river. And it was like there's like 6 drunk people there, and it should have been a bad gig, but because the people were so awesome that we were playing with, I had the time of my life.
It seems like, one of those like anything can happen, unpredictability kind of things, because you're just in the room with so many people and
yeah,
the craziness that I guess it just depends on like the environment, because it can either go great or it can suck.
It's kind of like parties. Like, sometimes you just show up at a party and you're like, okay, this is going to be a great party. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be a great party because this person's here and this person's here. And it's just like it's just really fun. And the advantage to Nashville is there's so many people in the pool who you can invite to the party.
Yes.
Like of the pool of people that you could invite to a party, there's so many of those great hangs that you know that most of the time when you show up, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, I mean, and also you just never know who you'd run into.
Yeah, I have a really fun story about meeting Garth Brooks by accident.
Really?
So we were playing, and Trisha Yearwood was playing right after us, a couple people, and I was in the green room and I was just talking to this dude, and we're just kind of shooting the breeze, and he's having a good time. And again, I did not grow up on country. I don't know the country. At this time, I was only 2 years in, so I didn't know the country very well. And talking to this guy, and he's telling me about his tractor and how he's having these problems. And I used to work on a farm growing up, and I was like, hey, why don't you try this? I mean, we used to have that, and sometimes it's this problem. He's like, oh, that's great. And I'm like, hey, I'm Eric. And he goes, hey, I'm Garth. I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. Didn't click. And then I see him walk over to Trisha Yearwood, grab her bags, and start walking away. I'm like, oh.
You don't want to embarrass yourself.
I was like, well, I made myself. Oh well.
There's always next time.
Yeah. No, it was just neat because he's just a regular guy.
Yeah.
Very kind. Very kind.
That's so cool. You just never know who you'd run into.
Yeah.
So we'll turn it over to this next selection here. This is called If You're Gonna Swing by Ace Monroe. You played on this song. Tell me about this, how you got this all.
So this one's mostly rock and roll. Ace Monroe, awesome band coming up here in Nashville. They're classic rock, and I am, to quote my friend Nick Bearden, who plays with Jamestown Revival, he calls the B3 organ the mayonnaise of rock and roll, which means you just like put it on, it smears everything together, so you hear little tinges there.
Okay, well, looking forward to hearing it. This is If You're Gonna Swing, right here on the Piano Men. And we're back on the Piano Men, talking with Eric Barfield about his career in the music business. Right now, Eric, we're gonna talk about some of the people you've played with. If you can, I'm going to just bring up some of the names that you've performed with over the years. If you can, talk about what was it like being on the road or performing with them. Share some anecdotes if you can. Mm-hmm. We'll start with Tracy Lawrence.
Tracy Lawrence. So I played with him on a TV show. And honestly, it was really quick in and out. He came in, and it was really cool. They were showcasing just different songs that like people have written, and we would play a song that he wrote back in the day that was like a hit, and then we'd play a song that he just wrote, and he'd talk about the differences between both. And it was just a really cool thing to like sit there and have somebody walk through their process of writing in real time, and then to be the guy who gets to accompany them is just great.
It's fascinating. A TV show. Do you remember the name?
I believe it's Songs and Stories with John Barry.
Okay. Yeah.
It's been a few years since it's been on the air. I think the last episode was 2017, but yeah, it was really fun. A very fun experience.
It's so cool to be on TV. Just one of those highlights you can always just remember.
Yeah.
All right. Matthew West.
So I've been he was the last artist that I was actually out on tour full time with before I got off the road. And Matthew's a wonderful person. We toured, about 80 or so shows a year together for almost 2 years. And yeah, just a really good person.
Okay. Rachel Lampa.
Rachel goes to my church, and she is a wonderful person as well. We played a whole bunch of different things. She actually was doing live streaming for quite a while, and so I would do a ton of live streaming with Rachel. And we would joke because I'm a very tall person. I'm 6'6", and she's maybe 5 foot, maybe. And so we would always joke that I would be sitting at my piano and be looking eye to eye with Rachel on stage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Chris Allen.
Chris Allen. Coldest gig I've ever played. It was New Year's Eve in Hershey, Pennsylvania. We went, and I remember sound checked. It was 0 degrees outside. I had a water bottle. I put it on top of my piano, and it froze in the 5-minute sound check we had. Solid, like all the way through.
Oh, goodness.
Because there was this wind coming out. So we played, to about 3,000 people in maybe 2-degree weather on New Year's Eve. It was
2 degrees.
It was so cold. Like nobody could feel their fingers.
That would be a hard gig to play.
It was hard, but again, like I said, when you have the right people, it's like, yes, this is very hard. This kind of sucks for everybody, but we're all having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess, the most important thing. Mm-hmm. All right. Have you played anywhere outside the U.S.?
Let's see. I played France. I've not done any international tours, surprisingly. But I have played France with Rebecca St. James. We had a one-off gig in France. We got to be there for 3 days. It was rough, man.
Really?
No, I'm totally joking. It was amazing. we basically got to post up and just kind of enjoy Paris, and then came back, and but it was an amazing experience.
It's fun to experience another culture, especially since you're used to, our own for so long. To see another culture, another part of the world, it's different, but it's fascinating.
It really is. And I was it was fun too, because I practiced my French. So I came in, I tried to order a baguette, and the guy in perfect English just goes, "Listen, it's fine, just use English." I'm like, okay, all right. So I think you could tell I might not be from there.
Yeah. Are there any places where you'd like to play, just dream gigs that you have?
One I have missed multiple times, just barely, with a couple artists, is Red Rocks. I'd love to play Red Rocks. Never played there. It seems like such an amazing venue. But honestly, Ryman was like top 3 venues to be before I even moved. So getting to play there was really like special for me.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get anything better than the Mother Church.
Yeah. There's something really special about that place.
Very intimate.
Yeah. And yet it's big, but you're right, it's intimate.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned earlier you had moved to Nashville 10 years ago? Mm-hmm. 10 years ago, okay. What was the driving force behind the move to Nashville? Because you were in Missouri for quite a while.
I was, yeah. So in Missouri, right out of high school, I made a rock band. And so we toured around for about, probably 6-7 years, something like that. And then I got married, and the band broke up at the same time, unrelated. And I kind of went into like, what does my career look like if I'm not in a rock band, And so what that translated into was I played a lot of cocktail jazz. I played a lot around St. Louis, but didn't really feel like I was going in doing the things I wanted to do. And I would come down to Nashville and meet with people, because all the people I really wanted to work with were here. And I would come down because it's only 4.5 hours from St. Louis to Nashville, and I would talk to people, and sometimes I'd drive back, but a lot of times it would be so late I'd just literally go down to there's a McDonald's in Franklin, and they had this place back behind the dumpster where I would pull my car and I would just sleep the night in the car, just hoping nobody would catch me. And then I'd get up the next morning and meet with more people. And eventually one of my friends, Matt Melton, he was like, you got to make the jump if you want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But my family's all in St. Louis. He's like, yeah, I know, but you got to go, So that was it.
Yeah, I mean, it's sacrifice. That's what it's about. It's sacrifice, commitment, knowing what you have to do to pursue your dreams. If you really want it bad enough, you just got to go for it.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, you had mentioned earlier, in addition to country music, you've also done contemporary Christian as well. What made you want to delve into that?
So the first few years when I was here, I did mostly classic country, and then a little bit of modern country, and then for whatever reason, I just started working in CCM a lot. And again, it's probably just the circles you run in, and so one of the first people here was an artist named Lindsay McCall. She lives in Franklin, and wonderful person, hired me, and and then I played with Matthew West, I played with Stephen Curtis Chapman, I played with just Francesca Battistelli and other people, Rebecca St. James, Rachel Lampa. There's been a few. So
outside of the Ryman and the Grand Ole Opry, where have been some of your most favorite places to play in Nashville?
In Nashville, boy, that's really, it's ironic. And I'm sure a lot of musicians who tour a lot will say the same thing. We don't play a lot in Nashville, because you're always going somewhere else. Like, even friends will hit me up sometime and be like, "Hey, where are you playing?" And I'm like, "Man, in South Georgia," or something like that. That said, I played the Basement East with this guy named Brian Elmquist, and that rocked. It was at the old location, when it was in a basement, and it was just an awesome experience.
The cool thing about Nashville is that we have so many different restaurants and bars and music venues in town. It's very important that people go to these places because we have lost so many over the years, and the ones that we still have are, I feel like, essential because that local music scene, there's nothing like it in the world. This is how we break in new artists. This is how we discover them before they become big and tour other places and eventually play the big arenas and the bigger venues. So local music, I think, is vital, and for how we can thrive and survive. So
I agree. Places like Puckett's in Franklin would be a great example of that. Like, just a down-home place where you can go and see really amazing musicians and also like eat some really good food.
Go for the fun of it, enjoy it, because you're never going to get an experience like this anywhere.
That was something that blew my mind when before I moved, to come down and like hear the level of talent that were playing like small coffee shops, and like, wow, like everybody's so good here.
You'd mentioned Franklin. Whenever I go downtown, a lot of times I will see somebody perform like on a street corner. With their guitar or violin.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Where else can you get that?
It's pretty unique, and then for them to be good too. That's just like, wow.
I'm just so like fascinated by the level of talent that I see come through Nashville, because they've just got some really incredible performers.
You're so right. And there's people here who have turned, like, the thing that encourages me the most is like, it's sort of a way of life here. And anybody who is listening who's lived here for a while knows that to be true. It's just like it's normalized to have really great music all around for a long time. And I think that's just such a wonderful thing, because with that comes a lot of like other really cool things, like really creative people who are always looking for unusual new possibilities, because those seems to kind of just go hand in hand with songwriting, with creativity, and then just the kindness that people have here is just amazing.
What's your favorite part about songwriting?
I love the first time that you realize your song doesn't suck. Like that first moment where you're like, oh, this might be a good song. Like, I might not throw this one away. And then if somebody else is in the room with you, and my favorite thing in the world is co-writing, and to have somebody else in the room who kind of mirrors that back to you and validates that, like, oh wow, this is a special moment, and then can run with it in a way you don't expect, that's really cool.
For you, do you focus on the music first, or do you focus on the lyrics first?
Man, usually it's kind of it's kind of mumbling to yourself like a crazy person for a little while you thump around on something. You just kind of play some chords or get something stuck in your head, and then it feels like it comes out of nowhere. There's something like some weird line will happen and it won't make sense, and then you'll write some more and it will start to make sense. It's really weird how it happens.
Really? I guess it's just everybody like has their own way of doing it. So
Yeah, and I'm sure it's unique to each person.
mm-hmm. Now, do you have like a favorite genre of music that you really enjoy playing the most?
I'm love pop, and I love pop because you get to do a lot of really cool things as a keyboard player in pop, and that kind of like goes across to Motown and hip hop and and then there's a strong pop element in CCM as well and country. And so it's kind of I get to scratch that itch in those genres.
Are there any songs that you have played? Because I know you play with a lot of people, but like when you're like playing with like a band just for fun, are there any songs that you enjoy playing?
Just for the heck of it?
Just for the heck of it?
Man, if I could just sit down and have... Well, I'll tell you, we had a funny moment the other day. I was playing with this band, and we started playing Brand New by Ben Rector, which is just a great song. And we're like, should we start a Ben Rector tribute band? Because, like, we all just like, this is so fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good when you're playing with your friends, having those moments where you're enjoying it, and you pick songs that are just have some meaning, some heart in there, and you're passionate about it. It's the best feeling in the world.
It's so true. And the thing that's special about being a sideman, which is what I've been for the last 10 years and will continue to be, is you get to see what's special for an artist for a song that maybe you don't like or maybe you don't think is the greatest, but then you live with it long enough because you have to learn it, you have to play it every night, that you realize like, oh wow, there's something special here I just didn't understand. Like you were talking about where like you grow over time and see like, oh, maybe I like this genre a little more, or I like this genre and I thought I hated it.
Yeah. It's amazing how like everything evolves over time, and music just changes so much. Any pop tunes you hear nowadays that really catch your eye?
I'm a massive Phoebe Bridgers fan. Her last album is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. But yeah, it's again a combination of really interesting production, and her writing is ties across songs. Like a lot of artists are writing singles now, which is great and totally understand why. And that album, which I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. I've listened to it like 100,000 times. It came out in 2020. She ties songs from the beginning and the end. It's a thematic, unified piece of writing while still being individual songs and not being a concept album. And that's really unusual and fun.
It's so cool because you find something that's just unique to you, and it may take you days, weeks, however long it takes. You find this thing and it works, it sticks, and you bring it into the world, people enjoy it, and you just continue to write more and more stuff.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why I like that album so much, is it kind of doesn't sound like a lot of the other albums I've heard, and I wonder when I've listened to it, I've wondered how did she have the guts to not sound exactly like everybody else for such a long time, because she's been doing this a while, and she's just now getting national traction with it, and it's just interesting to think like this person has a lot of guts to be able to stick it out with this.
Yeah. It's interesting. The music business has definitely changed a lot in the last 20, 25 years. Do you feel it's changed, or do you feel like it's still the same somewhat?
Man, there has been like 25 years ago was what
2000.
2000, yeah. So you think about 2000, early 2000, you had Napster.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had Spotify in like what 2007, something like that.
Yeah.
So like CDs, it's drastically shifted so many times. It's crazy to think about.
It's hard to count too, because I remember when the iPod first came out and was big.
Yeah,
And
was
so many
huge.
people had, because you had like the small ones, then you had like the real small ones.
Yeah, the nano ones you could fit in like the little tiny
Yeah.
jean pocket.
And iTunes now, of course, is like Apple Music, and they had like they still do the 99-cent downloads and the 129.
Do you know anybody who actually does that anymore?
I have no idea.
I haven't met anybody in a while who's done that.
It's crazy because everything's all heading towards streaming. I'm old school. I love physical media, so CDs, vinyls. I still remember the days of cassette tapes.
Yeah, all the crackle and
yeah,
you're like having to rewind them.
goodness gracious. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's the thing that's interesting. Anytime there's a disruption in a market, there's two things that happen. One, the people lose a lot of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you there's a lot of people where suddenly the model doesn't work, but then at the same time there's opportunity for new artists.
Exactly.
And like to see, like I was just talking to an artist today at that listening party I just came from, who was talking about how she's playing to 7,000 people every night on TikTok. 7,000 people for free. She has a phone, she has a room, she has a guitar. She plays that. I mean, to think like if it was 1970 whatever, can you imagine how much like the Rolling Stones would have killed to have played? I mean, maybe not in 1970, but in 1950 they would have killed to have played to 7,000 people a night in their bedroom. So there's advantages and disadvantages.
I also think that the pandemic really kind of brought a lot of that stuff on with the streaming, the live streams, and all these different like platforms where you could just do concerts from home.
Yeah.
Nowadays you got these packages with the tours and everything like that, and you have like the card readers and scanners, and it's another world to me because technology, as you said, it's just shifted.
Yeah.
It really has.
And I think you can fight it to some extent, but you kind of have to jump on.
Yeah.
At a certain point and be like, look, if people are here, what's my goal? Like, what do I care about the most?
Exactly.
If I care about me, like hanging with, like connecting with people, I want to go wherever the technology is going to allow me to do that.
Exactly.
So.
Well, Eric, before we wrap things up here, what's next for you?
Man, I have signed with Eager Management here in town, and I'm producing. So I'm a baby producer.
Congratulations!
I'm working with a lot of other. Again, I feel like I'm back where I was 10 years ago, where I'm working with. I don't have a name. I don't have a reputation in that world yet, and I'm having to earn it all over again, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. And I really like challenges.
Yeah.
It keeps you interested.
Well, where do you see yourself, in the next few years? What is your ultimate goal?
Well, man, 10 years from now, I'd love to be producing almost full-time and session work full-time.
Okay.
And I think, or at least 50-50. So we're 30-70 or 70-30, whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
So.
Any advice you want to leave our listeners with if they want to pursue music?
If they want to pursue music, my first thing would be like, if you can do anything else other than music, do it. But if you really want to do music, go ahead and jump in. There's room for you.
It's all about finding where you fit.
Mm-hmm. And there's room.
Yeah.
There's room. Yeah.
It's like that puzzle. You just got to find the piece, and it'll fit right in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really cool that you have the independent artists out there that are making their names, because that's where we can discover you for the first time, and boom, takes off.
Yeah, that's true. And you can make a very nice living and have a good, solid life making music and doing it from the comfort of your home. If you want to tour, you can do that. If you want to be famous, you can do that. If you don't want to be famous, you can do that. There's a lot of options. So,
well, Eric, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. I want to say thank you for coming on to the show. Where can people find you on social media if they want to get in touch with you?
It's Eric Plays Music on Instagram. So just if you look that up, I post dumb reels all the time. I'm trying my best. I didn't grow up with reels, so it's a little bit of a learned skill.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of you.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us this week on the Piano Men. Stay tuned. We've got more of your favorite piano players coming right up. Until then, I'm Stanley Carr, and I'll see you next time.